Hello and welcome. This week we're on to week 3 of The Artist's Way. This is a 12-week program created by Julia Cameron. The focus is to tap into our own creativity, find out what is getting in our way. Whoops, that's a little too dark. And before I get into the specifics of week 3, first, a big thank you to anyone who's able to join in today's live stream. I know that between work schedules, time zones, and so many other things, it's not always possible to pop in when the stream is going live. A big thank you to the folks who are Team Rewatch. Very much appreciated. Now, in the previous weeks, and I need to make myself a note, I forgot to add in the description box a link to the intro video that I've already done on the Artist's Way. That goes through the different tools and the main concepts that the program involves. I've also talked about the fact that Julia taught this particular program for a number of years before putting everything together into the published version of The Artist's Way. Now, the copy that I have is a 10-year anniversary edition. I believe there's also a 25-year anniversary edition. In other words, this program has been helping people for a very long time. And it isn't just for artists in the traditional sense of painters, musicians, authors. It can be for anyone who's maybe feeling stuck, not quite sure which direction to go in. A lot of great exercises and activities. You work at your own pace, and that's the part that I really enjoy. In this particular program, unlike the listening path, which I've already done as a video series, and you can find that in my self-help playlist, in the Artist's Way, we have 10 exercises at the end of each week. Now, because this only runs a week, you're not going to finish all the exercises. So what Julia suggests is read over the exercises at the end, pick and choose which ones you feel drawn to do, and it may not necessarily be the exercises that seem to be the easiest to do. Take a look at the ones that you think you're going to get the most benefit from. This isn't about having to do all 10 that week. You can always go back as you're working through the program or even after you finished it and do those other exercises at a later date. Also choose how you're going to record your answers, whether that's old school paper and pencil. You may want to do it on the computer, set up a Word document or Pages, depending on the system that you're using. So make it fun, make it interesting, because this is all about you feeling better about yourself. In the previous weeks, so in week number 1, we of course talked about setting that foundation, because without a solid foundation, you can't really build something that's going to last over time. So week 1 is about getting that foundation set so we have things to build on. Week 2 is about what's standing in our way and what do we have supporting us. So assessing our support systems, whether that's in life, day to day, or it may be our virtual support systems, the communities that you belong to, the people that you've connected with, the folks that you may message on whatever system you use, Facebook, Discord, Voxer, and there's probably a ton that I don't even know the names of. So assessing what are those strengths, who can you count on to be there, Who do you reach out to when things get tough? And likewise, who are you there for when things are challenging and difficult? It's also why it's extremely important to make sure we're taking care of ourselves. So when things happen, we're able to give to the folks who rely on us as well. It's a mutual benefit. This week is very timely, especially with just everything going on in the world. I mean, I could say that since January 2025, both on a personal level, community, and global level, there have been a lot of upheavals. So having that sense of power is important. There's a lot of things right now that seem to be out of our control. There's only so much we can do. So we have to really be careful about how are we spending our time? What are we choosing to put our energy into? And what can we realistically do and accomplish? I meant to have, and I actually need to get this done this week, a copy of the Serenity Prayer. I've also shared that on my channel before, and it is definitely words of wisdom these days, and I have a feeling for some time to come. And if you're not familiar with the Serenity Prayer, that talks about knowing where we can make changes, having the wisdom to do the things that we can, but also having the wisdom to know that maybe this is something we can't make a change in. So you keep moving forward and focus on what you can effectively put your time and energy into. And again, that doesn't mean that you're not concerned or, have feelings about other things that are going on. It means setting priorities, taking care of yourself, and making sure that you're living your best possible life and just moving forward the best you can. And on those days where there's a blip and you're just not feeling it, that's okay too. There is no one on this planet who has an amazing day every day. So you move forward as best you can. And on those meh days, then appreciate it's a meh day, and that's all right. Everyone's entitled to have one of those. On with week 3. Starting off, Julia says, this week may find you dealing with unaccustomed bursts of energy and sharp peaks of anger, joy, and grief. You're coming into your power as the illusory hold of your previously accepted limits is shaken. You'll be asked to consciously experiment with spiritual open-mindedness. Now, she starts off with anger and says, anger is fuel. We feel it and we want to do something. Hit someone, break something, throw a fit, smash a fist into the wall, tell those bleeps. But we are nice people. And what we do with our anger is stuff it, deny it, bury it, block it, hide it, medicate it, muffle it, ignore it. We do everything but listen to it. Now, she also goes on to talk about in the recovery of a blocked artist, anger is a sign of health. Anger is meant to be acted upon. It is not meant to be acted out. And those are two very different things. So acknowledging that there's anger, but it doesn't mean, those other things I mentioned, pitching a fit, throwing things around, however you visualize or think of doing that. she goes on to say, and this is on page 61. She had to check because there's never the page number at the beginning of the weeks. Anger points the direction. We're meant to use anger as fuel to take the actions we need to move where our anger points us. With a little thought, we can usually translate the message that our anger is sending us. On page 62, she goes on to say, I can't believe it. I had this idea for a play 3 years ago, and she's gone and written it. This anger says, stop procrastinating. Ideas don't get opening nights, I'd add there, or published novels. Finished plays do. Start writing. So that's an example of not pitching a fit and, getting physical or anything with anger. That's showing the direction of you may be angry, you've had this idea, maybe, and I'll relate a lot of this back to YouTube as much as I can because when I'm on YouTube and here we are, and for content creators, I've been hearing a number of them lately. There are a lot of videos out there, and whether it's booktube and even other genres that I follow, people are just done. They're exhausted or overwhelmed or frustrated with some of the things happening either on this specific platform or others. And that, of course, is an indication of blocked artists. For some people, it's a simple matter of they just don't have the time right now. There are a lot of content creators who are working full time, they have families, they have so many other things on the go. So, with the content creation, it's that big question of is it something you have time to do? Do you need to tweak and prioritize a few things? All of that type of thing. So, talking about this, if you see, and maybe you've had an idea for a great video, there are certain things you wanted to say or do in a video, and suddenly you see 3 or 4 other videos all related to that. And then you're like, well, there's no point doing it. Except there is, because everyone has their own take on something, their own way of presenting, their own way of speaking, the different things they'll add to a video. So just because other people may have already covered that topic, or I'll use BookTube as an example because that's where I've been mainly hanging out for a while. Just because other people have done videos about a book that you've recently read, you're going to bring an entirely different viewpoint to it. There's that excitement. How did you feel about it? Or maybe you didn't enjoy reading it. So I would say, go ahead, do that video anyways. And that's exactly what Julie is saying here in terms of the example she's using is someone who wrote a play about something she had considered. But, if you don't follow through and act on those ideas and interests, then nothing's going to come of it, right? So she goes on to finish that section about anger. Used properly, anger is useful. So again, it's not about pitching a fit and what have you. It's about identifying what's frustrating you, what's making you angry, and what is it telling you that you need to do, whether that's stop procrastinating. Maybe you've already done all the research and it's time to pull things together and move forward. Or maybe you've had an amazing idea for a picture or a sculpture and it's just time to start doing it. The next thing she goes on to talk about on page 62, and this one is one I'm very familiar with. The heading is synchronicity. If you've been here for a bit, I've mentioned James Redfield, the Celestine prophecy. That, of course, ties in with this as well. So Julia describes it as answered prayers are scary. They imply responsibility. You asked for it. Now that you've got it, what are you going to do? Why else the cautionary phrase, watch out for what you pray for, you just might get it. Answered prayers deliver us back to our own hand. This is not comfortable. We find it easier to accept them as examples of synchronicity. And she does give some examples which are pretty cool. And again, this means paying attention to what's going on in your life. Who are you connecting with? Who stepped up to help you or offer you something, or you suddenly meet someone that ties in perfectly with what you were thinking about. So, a couple of the examples she gives: a woman admits to a buried dream of acting. At dinner the next night, she sits beside a man who teaches beginning actors. Now, some people may call that synchronicity. Some people may just call that a fluke, good luck. There's lots of different names for it. A couple other examples she gives: a woman wonders how to rent a rare film she's never seen. She finds it at her neighborhood bookstore 2 days later. A businessman who has secretly written for years vows to himself to ask a professional writer for an opinion on his talent. The next night, over a pool table, he meets a writer who becomes his mentor and then collaborator on several successful books. So again, keeping an eye for those people we meet and those lovely aha or oh wow moments of you've got your plan, you've got your idea, and suddenly things fall into place that allow you to move forward with that. She goes on to talk about quite a bit more about that issue as well. Few other highlights. Life is what we make of it. This is from page 64. Whether we conceive of an inner God force or an other outer God doesn't matter. Relying on that force does. And I have mentioned before that when Julia uses the word God, she doesn't necessarily mean the Christian version of it. If that's your path and your faith, then stick with that. But you could also put in creative force, universe, divinity, any of those other terms and other names that are specific to your spiritual path. And she does mention in the beginning of the book as well, don't let semantics get in the way of moving forward with this program and your own movement forward. So, like I say, and she encourages at the beginning of the book, if the word God does not fit for you, then insert the word that does. I also made note here that I'd been reading a book on Edgar Cayce, and this chapter, when I read it a few weeks ago, tied in perfectly with it. And in that case, and I have that book right handy here. Now I'll have to work on this lighting because it just doesn't quite seem to sit in the right spot. So this is all new, first time in print, Edgar Cayce answers life's 10 most important questions. This is by John G. Fuller, under the editorship of Charles Thomas Cayce. It was an amazing read. I need to go through and make some notes. And of course, as it is Edgar Cayce works, well, there probably are some newer ones. I need to check that out. but this was published in 1989. Of course, there is the organization still in Virginia Beach, and they may have some newer publications. But if you're interested in Edgar Cayce and some of his readings and his work, this is definitely a read worth delving into. And again, this was an awesome find at my local thrift store. It's truly amazing the different books that I've come across there that I certainly wouldn't have thought to search if I was doing online shopping. But that did tie in with prayers and things being answered. I just want to see where I want to go on here. Okay, so we'll get into, and in the listening path, we also talked about Carl Jung. That was one of the people who Julia talked about making a connection with in terms of asking questions and then listening. When we answer that, maybe I should start this at the beginning. So this is page 64. In outsized lives, such moments stand out in bas relief, large as Mount Rushmore. Lewis and Clark headed west. Isaac Dinesen took off for Africa. We all have our Africas, those dark and romantic notions that call to our deepest selves. When we answer that call, when we commit to it, we set in motion the principle that C.G. Jung dubbed synchronicity, loosely defined as a fortuitous intermeshing of events. Back in the 60s, we called it serendipity. Whatever you choose to call it, once you begin your creative recovery, you may be startled to find it cropping up everywhere. Don't be surprised if you try to discount it. It can be a very threatening concept. Although Jung's paper on synchronicity was a cornerstone of his thought, even many Jungians prefer to believe it was a sort of side issue. They dismiss it, like his interest in the I Ching, as an oddity, nothing to take too seriously. Now, obviously, James Redfield and the Celestine Prophecy series had a different idea about it. And James Redfield does talk about synchronicity. That's the term that he uses. The first book, of course, focuses on the 9 Mayan insights, where the narrator goes to look for the various pieces. Jung might differ with them. Following his own inner leadings brought him to experience and describe a phenomena that some of us prefer to ignore: the possibility of an intelligent and responsive universe acting and reacting in our interests. This also ties in with the work by Pam Grout, E squared and E cubed, and those books she describes as proof that synchronicity works. The universe, God, whatever name you choose to have, is listening. And if you do your part, the universe will do its part and ensure that the people and the resources and the support that you need are all present as you move along your path. Now, again, with this, keep in mind, that doesn't mean that the path is easy or that there won't be some blips or bumps along the way. Of course there will. If everything was like super easy, you'd be bored. So keep in mind that even if there are blips and bumps and obstacles in the road, those are chances to either take a break, maybe you need to fine-tune something, or you just need to take a different path, or those obstacles and blips are giving you the skills you need for something that's coming farther down the road. In other words, it doesn't mean that it's a negative. It may feel like it, especially if you're really excited and wanting to move forward, but it's okay if there's a blip or a bump in the road. The next part that Julia talks about in this particular week is about shame. Some of you are thinking, this is page 67, if it were that easy to take an action, I wouldn't be reading this book. Those of us who get bogged down by fear before action are usually being sabotaged by an older enemy, shame. Shame is a controlling device. Shaming someone is an attempt to prevent the person from behaving in a way that embarrasses us. Now, I think there's a little bit more to that, certainly looking at some of the things that happen on social media, and that happens across many different platforms. And, you get these trolls or naysayers, and they're just trying to create drama. So it isn't so much that they're worried about what you're going to say embarrassing them. They're just trying to prevent you from moving forward, or that old saying of push your buttons, which of course would just take you off track and move you in a different direction. So be mindful of those types of people. She also talks about, and this is page 68, adults who grew up in dysfunctional homes learn to use this coping device very well. They call it detachment, but it's actually a numbing out. He forgot my birthday. Oh well, no big deal. A lifetime of this kind of experience, in which needs for recognition are routinely dishonored, teaches a young child that putting anything out for attention is a dangerous act. And again, taking a look at your own background, your own life experiences. In week 2, she had the exercise of going through your life, breaking it into 5-year increments as you try and narrow down where are some of those old negative messages coming from. Were they from family? Were they from friends? Were they from school? And really taking this program seriously, being honest with yourself, and tracking all that information down is what helps to really solidify that foundation, get yourself on firm supports, and being able to move forward. Now, she also says here, let me be clear, this is page 69, not all criticism is shaming. In fact, even the most severe criticism, when it fairly hits the mark, is apt to be greeted by an internal aha, if it shows the artist a new and valid path for work. The criticism that damages is that which dismisses, ridicules, or condemns. It's frequently vicious but vague and difficult to refute. This is the criticism that damages. So again, being mindful of, is it constructive, helpful criticism? In other words, let's use an example of a video, and if someone shares with you about there was an issue with the lighting or an issue with the audio, or maybe throughout the video you were doing a lot of type of thing. Constructive criticism would be, whether it's in the comments or through messaging or an email, etc., would be, hey, I was watching your video, I noticed this or that, and that's someone trying to help you in terms of what your content looks like, sounds like, etc. Different than there are other ways to word that, or someone just saying, oh, that's a stupid topic. Why would you talk about that? That isn't helpful or constructive. That's just a troll trying to get you wound up, etc. Now, on page 70, she also goes on to talk about, as artists, we cannot control all the criticism we will receive. And again, as a YouTube content creator or on any platform, you can't control what people are going to comment or say. You can decide whether you're going to take that personally or not. And again, you really need to assess. Do you know this person? Is it someone's opinion that you value or appreciate? Is it someone just making a comment because they can? We cannot make our professional critics more healthy or more loving or more constructive than they are. But we can learn to comfort our artist child over unfair criticism. We can learn to find friends with whom we can safely vent our pain. We can learn not to deny and stuff our feelings when we have been artistically savaged. And again, that's very important. Having a strong base, whether that's family, friends, combination of both, a supportive community, all of that is crucial. But of course, it starts with our personal self-worth. Of course, she goes on to continue talking about that and giving other examples. She has some ideas on how to deal with criticism. On page 73, the section is titled Detective Work and Exercise, and there are 20 short questions to answer to assess where you're at. And they're all easy to answer. A few examples are, my favorite childhood toy. If I weren't too late, I'd do what? Taking time out for myself that is an important one to answer because, again, what's standing in the way of you doing things for yourself and your own self-care? She goes on then to talk about growth. And of course, the important thing to remember here, whether we're doing this as an artist, dealing with an issue in our lives, reassessing where we're at, growth is not linear. It's not always going to go forward. Sometimes we go forward. Sometimes we take a few steps back. That ties back into we're not always going to have spectacular, awesome, amazing days. Sometimes we have a bad day or two, and we just move forward through it, except that we all have bad days, and that's okay. In terms of growth, she says, this is on page 74, very often a week of insights will be followed by a week of sluggishness. The morning pages will seem pointless. They are not. And I've already shared that I do journaling different than the morning pages that she recommends. If you're on Team Rewatch, you can let me know in the comments down below. Do you find morning pages helpful? Have you tried them before? Have you done them for a while? I did try them the 2 other times that I did this program, and it just isn't a system that worked for me, but I found a journaling system that does. What you're learning to do, writing them even when you're tired and they seem dull, is to rest on the page. This is very important. Marathon runners suggest you log 10 slow miles for every fast one. The same holds true for creativity. Now, for myself, like I say, I do my journaling different than the morning pages and how Julia has them laid out and suggests to do first thing when you wake up. But personally, I've noticed when I don't do my journaling, it impacts my sleep and my thinking and so many other things. So I agree with her. I just do it different. So I do my journaling at night. That's when it helps me clear out my mind. Well, sometimes I'll do it later in the morning, but typically I just find as long as I get to it and I don't skip too many days, then things flow along much better and more smoothly. If I'm kind of off track and, things aren't flowing or going well, then I find, oh, I haven't been journaling lately. So it does stand out for me. Then on page 75, we're up to the 10 different tasks. Same as with the listening path, there's always a check in, and you would do that at the end of the week. So, again, it's up to you whether you're doing this on a Monday to Sunday format, Saturday, Friday, starting and following through on the days that work best for you. With the check ins, of course, you're going through, are you doing your morning pages? In my case, journaling. Did you do your artist date, which is spending time just doing something fun, but doing it on your own? No one else is allowed at the artist date. Was there any synchronicity this week? So with week 3, that's what we've been talking about. So did you make a connection with someone? Was there a surprise gift or bit of information that arrived in your life? Was there anything that came up that was standing in the way of you moving forward or doing art? And that takes us up to week 4, which will be next week. And next week is about recovering a sense of integrity, along with regaining our sense of power and recognizing what we can work with and all of that type of thing. Integrity is certainly an important skill to have. Now, last week when I did the live stream, I had a few people here and we got into various chit chats. This week, it seems everyone has been busy. So I've gotten through the chapter. We've talked specifically about that. And I think I will wrap it up there. If you're on Team Rewatch, thank you so much. Let me know if you're doing the artist way. Have you done it before? And have you done any of Julia's other works? Yes, the back of this, she has Finding Water as well as Walking in This World. I have a hard copy of her work. It was also, I believe, an anniversary edition with all 3 books together, The Artist's Way, the other 2 programs. And when I finish The Artist's Way this time, I'll be moving on to Finding Water. That's one of her programs that I haven't done before. Not sure if I'll put that up as a series. I think after The Artist's Way, I'll be switching and doing something different on Mondays. It'll still relate to different self-help books and authors of that genre. If you've seen my book audit videos that I did last year and did a tour of all the books, I have a number of different authors and books to talk about. But as I say, I'm going to end it here today. If you're here on Team Rewatch, still listening, give me a thumbs up in the comments down below. And until next Monday, remember, be safe, be well, and big hugs. Take good care.